welcome aboard the grand ship, the Space Show once again. I am your host, Ensign Rebecca Frost, joined by noted Space Show fan Kerry Jackson. Hello, Kerry. Welcome
Hi
back.
there.
10 standing by.
Red 7 standing by.
Red 3 standing
This
by.
is-
Red 6.
Wrong show.
That's wrong. This is incorrect.
Okay. I thought I had my red alert klaxon handy, but
This week, we are going to be talking about the Menagerie Parts 1 and 2, The Conscience of the King, Balance of Terror, and Shore Leave. And
now
got
before
s-
we start,
yeah.
I want this is for the YouTube audience. If you're listening on podcast, you'll have to go to the YouTube to see this. But Rebecca's favorite character, Harry Mudd.
No.
I reached into my archives and I found my Harry Mudd action figure. They did make a Harry Mudd action figure, and here he is.
Ugh.
Now, sadly, as you can see, he does not have the hairy chest.
Oh, what a bummer.
So
Hey, he
what
doesn't have
we
a
need-
hat either.
He doesn't have a hat either. But what we need to do is we'll get Lee, because he does the painting and the stuff on action figures. We'll get him to add chest hair to
Are
this
you
action figure.
willing to take Harry Mudd out of the box? Because
Well, that's the thing. I'm not
he's
sure.
still in the box.
I think this is the only Harry Mudd action figure that they've ever made.
Oh, then
I
yeah,
could
you
be
gotta
wrong.
keep. I can't fathom the concept of making multiple Harry Mudd figures. That's
I'll have to
absolutely
look into
insane
that.
to me.
All right. Anyway, let's go.
This week, a couple of points I want to hit before we dive right into these episodes.
Okay.
First, how great is it that Strange New Worlds is back? First of all,
Oh, yes. It's just
so jazzed.
we talked about it earlier, but it's so great for me because I grew up on the original series that we're talking about. But then I get to see them make it the way that it should have been made, Of course, we didn't have that technology and special effects back then. They were trying as hard as they could, but at the same time, they were constrained by budget and time and all of that stuff. I gotta say, I love the Enterprise. It's my favorite ship, but the Strange New World edition
Ooh,
might be my favorite. It's pretty sexy.
Oh man, there's I can't wait until we do our deep dive on it because I have just fun memes that I have made for my own enjoyment. But also another point I want to hit, it is so interesting to watch Strange New Worlds and the original series concurrently because
Yes.
they are so different. The ship is just so different. The communication between people is so different. People having actual roles is so different. But also, the last point I want to hit, it is so interesting to watch these episodes in particular that we're going to talk about while watching Strange New Worlds. Because I have a vague idea of Captain Pike's whole deal because I haven't watched Discovery. But I know he knows about his upcoming fate. And so let's just jump right on into it. Talk about the Menagerie Part 1.
And 3 episodes that we're going to be talking about have connections to Strange New Worlds. 3 of
Yes,
them.
absolutely baffling. So insane. So in the Menagerie Part 1, Spock
Yes.
kidnaps the crippled Captain Pike, hijacks the Enterprise, and then surrenders for court-martial. Slight spoiler warning for Strange New Worlds. Spock has a history of this.
I think, he steals the ships a lot. I think if you're listening to something called the Space Show, you've probably seen all this stuff already. But anyway,
I have to assume.
Yeah.
This is the only 2-part story in Star Trek, the original series. All of the Star Trek spin-off shows have many 2-part stories, but this is the only 2-parter in the original series. And I thought this first episode was so boring. I couldn't. Well, at first I was like, "Oh, our good friend Captain Pike shows up," and then they reveal Captain Pike, and I'm like, "Oh no, our friend Captain Pike shows up." And now that South Park episode makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, I'm glad it helped you.
Yeah.
Jeff and I always said that the one toy that we always wanted was based
Captain
on,
Pike in the chair?
but specifically we wanted it to be a bump and go.
Oh my
Captain
God.
Pike. You
Like a
know,
remote control.
well, you remember the toys? You'd put the battery in them, and then you'd put them on a table, and somehow the toy was able to censor it was about to go off the table, and it would turn around.
Oh, Dios
Or if you
mío.
set it on the floor, it would hit the wall and turn around. So we wanted a bump and go Captain Pike in his fancy space wheelchair.
Ah, it's also kind of hilarious to me that in this future, in this Star Trek future, this is the best we can do for Captain Pike.
Well,
I feel
you'll
like this
notice.
wouldn't happen in Strange New Worlds.
Well, you'll notice that a lot of the technology they just couldn't imagine. I mean, like we'll talk about DNA coming up soon, but because that would have ended one of these episodes right away. But the one where it's coming up. But yeah, this one, it did have its limitations. Technologically, we should have been able to communicate with Captain Pike much better than yes or no beeping. But at the same time, it's a wonderful storytelling device. You know,
Yeah.
because he
Yeah.
said, Captain Pike, do you think we should proceed? Beep. Yes. Okay.
Alrighty. Any other opinions?
No, that's
Beep,
good. That's
beep.
where I'm at.
This episode is one of those episodes too where Spock, if you would use your words, can you people just use your words and tell us what
You-
like I understand for the grand scheme of the story it has to be mysterious and it has to be communicated a very specific way, but oh my god, so irritating. It's like Ant-Man in the Quantum Mania. It all could have been fixed with just a conversation.
A conversation. Michelle Pfeiffer, would you tell us what happened down there? Yes.
No.
Then there's no movie. But yeah.
Yeah.
No,
so,
you're right. If Spock would have said, "Listen, you know I used to work for Captain Pike. Love the guy." Well, I won't say love. He was a
Fantastic.
good guy. I got a situation.
Yeah.
I think he could have presented it to Kirk and McCoy, and
Totally.
said, yeah, "Here's what's going on. What do you say?"
Right, and that's part of the whole thing about being in Starfleet, right? It's all about trusting the people that you're with, like trusting the people on your ship and your command.
But conversely, if Spock had done that, it would have been bringing Kirk and McCoy in on the death penalty as well.
Yeah, I guess that's true because the whole point of the episode is you cannot go to Talos 4. Like
Yeah,
big
it's
hard no.
There are very few death penalty infractions in the future in Starfleet and the Federation. There are very few. One of them
Which
is
is
you don't
also
go to
kind
that
of weird.
planet
Why would Starfleet have a death penalty?
because they really don't want you to go to that planet.
But this episode also, one of my notes is, maybe we should have watched The Cage because it is my understanding that a lot of The Cage is what part 2 turns into. So, we get the very beginnings of this story that Pike is trying to tell where they previously have arrived on Talos 4, and this is the story of Pike's time on Talos 4, which leads into the Menagerie Part 2, where at Spock's court-martial, he explains himself with mysterious footage about when Captain Pike was kidnapped by powerful illusion-casting aliens. And I gotta say, the Menagerie Part 2 has bumped the Corbomite maneuver out of the #1 spot, and this episode has become my new favorite episode.
So you didn't care for part 1, but part 2 you really liked.
Yeah, part 1 I thought was so boring.
Well, then you should have just watched The Cage then. 'Cause
I
that's
know.
what the entire episode is.
I know,
The
but I'm
Cage-
excited for us to go back later to
And
watch
watch The
The
Cage?
Cage. Yeah.
The Cage was the original Star Trek pilot. Pike was supposed to be the captain. That was supposed to be the series, but the network said it was too brainy. And I don't think they meant just because of the big-headed aliens, but they felt there wasn't enough action. There was too much talking, damn it.
The big-headed aliens with the heads that look like butts and the veins pulsate.
I got another visual here for you. So if you're
Oh,
watching us on
no.
YouTube, you're lucky. This is the action figure that we got back in
Wait,
the
that's-
70s.
That's
But
from
you'll-
the Corbomite maneuver.
No, this is
Oh.
I know it looks like Baylock,
Yeah, it
but
looks
it's
nothing
supposed
like that.
it's supposed to be one of the Telosians.
Huh.
And it doesn't look anything like it. But later, luckily, we got one that looks just like the lead Telosian.
And you know what I'm dying to see? Peter Capaldi is one of these guys. Because these guys all looked like Peter Capaldi to me.
Good casting. I like it.
Right? Yeah, this episode is so smart, I think. Just some really cool storytelling techniques. Like these aliens who can literally make you see anything they want you to see.
Mm-hmm.
And what a cool torture technique so they essentially capture Captain Pike because previously, years ago, they've captured a woman and added her to their menagerie, their zoo, and the female needs a mate. And so they have taken Captain Pike and put him and her in this cage together. Okay, now reproduce, please, for our entertainment. And Pike is like, I'm good. I'm Captain Pike and I got my wits about me. I would like to get back to my ship, please. And the woman's like, can we just stay? Like, come on. Like, she's like definitely on Team Telosians.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a scene where the aliens have manipulated Pike's vision so that he sees, they're like in the countryside and he's got a denim on denim look and there's a horse. Really setting up Episode 1, Strange New Worlds, Captain Pike. Because when we first see him, he's rugged, denim on denim, rides a horse through the snow. Like, this is so Captain Pike's vibe that I was like, wow, I think that's really cool that they have adopted this and made it his whole personality.
Well, yeah, and in Strange New Worlds, the first episode, he's on a horse. He's he's doing the whole thing, living in a cabin, the whole deal.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved it. And of course, the team finds their way there, and another brown-haired woman who knows how to do her job. She like saves the day. So, but the Telosians capture the brown-haired woman and the red-haired woman and leave all of the other men behind.
Well, because clearly the human male has decided that he doesn't like this one, so we'll give him a couple of other options here.
Yeah.
This one called Number One is really smart and will produce intelligent children. Where the redhead is, physically, she's. They're talking like zookeepers,
she's very, Yeah, it's okay, but it's so cool because they drop this bit of knowledge that the blonde woman, Vina, crashed there 18 years ago, and I'm like, whoa, but she's like so hot. That's crazy. And then later it shows the Telosians drop their illusion and she is butchered because
from the spaceship crash.
Because from when she crashed, she explains they had no framework for how a human is built, and so they just kind of put me together the best they could. And she's hideous, right? I mean, like, for TV standards, like,
she looked like Popeye, kind of.
She had like a hunchback, and like her skin was all mangled, and that's why, because Pike is like, okay, we're gonna get out of here, come with us, and she's like, absolutely not, like, you must see why I cannot leave. And it's because they have created this world for her where she can be young and beautiful and live out the rest of her days however she pleases. And
you'll see the Roddenberry sexual fantasies are all through this episode,
Oh man, they introduced the Green Orion slave girl, which no man can resist, and Kerry has produced
the action figure of Vina, the green-skinned woman.
Honestly, she was crushing it. She was hot to trot in this episode.
Susan Oliver, life-changing for a lot of us at the time. She was just a vision to see, and the whole green skinned woman, Kirk fetish thing was established there, and that the Orion slave girl was way before Princess Leia in her slave outfit. It was,
and I'll argue even hotter because she was moving and grooving.
It's a toss up, I'll say, But yeah, Susan Oliver as Vina was just transcendent to me. I mean, she
was phenomenal. I thought it was so. I noticed from this point on, they really upped the budget as far as good women actors, because in the next couple of episodes, like when they introduced Barrows, I'm like, wow, she's fantastic. She's doing great.
Well, if you look at Susan Oliver's IMDb, she was working a lot before this episode. There's a lot of TV, mostly TV, a couple of movies, but mostly TV. And she continued to work after this episode. A lot of TV, a lot of episodic TV. She was, I mean, she was a good actress. She just, there's just no other way to describe it. She was damn good.
Yeah. And the twist of this episode caught me so off guard that I was like, okay, wow, what a fantastic episode. Because the whole reason Spock is stealing the ship to take Captain Pike back to Talos 4 in the first place is, as they have demonstrated, a place to live out your days. Mm-hmm. It's like a horrible injury retirement community, because he's like, yes, please take me back there where I know I can live and not be constrained to this chair and this space.
You're not all messed up. Both of us, we're both all screwed up, and we're now young and beautiful for the rest of our days.
For the rest of our days,
and we can ride horses, and it's almost heaven.
And live out, yeah, exactly. I was like, wow, this is some real Black Mirror stuff. It's a lot like the San Junipero episode of Black Mirror. Where, your consciousness gets uploaded to the cloud, but here, you get to live inside your brain and do whatever.
I mean, and bless Spock for wanting to do this for his friend, because,
that's the other thing, is the fact that Spock does this all for his friend, Captain Pike.
He risks his career and his life for Captain Pike, which there establishes these two have a relationship that we, watching the show at this time, take a drink, we're not aware of that relationship.
Which makes watching Strange New Worlds even better, because their relationship is going to go so deep.
I mean, we get a little bit of a glimpse of it during the Cage episode, but they don't explore it a lot. Mm-hmm. And this is, before Nimoy really had Spock figured out, because he would smile occasionally and yell for some reason. I can't understand why he's yelling things up on the bridge. It was a great reuse of the pilot episode, because they were falling behind on production, and they're like, we need to do something, and Roddenberry said, we got this the pilot. Here's an idea. Let's do an envelope episode, as they called it, an envelope episode around it. And so they fashioned it together, and it was, all the action takes place on the original pilot. The stuff that we're doing is mostly just sitting around talking in a courtroom. So it was they were able to shoot it quickly and cheaply and incorporate it in, and you still got to see the pilot, and it still worked. So
yeah, and this episode, I don't have any trivia that I found to share, because all I wanted to do was just gush about how much I loved this episode, and how it's just what a good story.
So now we're
sci-fi.
Okay, so far in the 15 episodes that we've that we are talking about, your number one is Menagerie Part 2.
Yes, followed by the Corbomite
maneuver. Okay.
I don't know what one would go after that.
Well, we got to continue to find out.
Yeah, there's a lot more show. So
it's all part of the journey.
And here's another thing I love about Star Trek, I'm learning, is episodes can be so wildly different from each other, because in The Conscience of the King, while Captain Kirk investigates whether an actor is actually a presumed dead mass murderer, a mysterious assailant is killing the people who could identify the fugitive. And this one I call the soap opera episode of Star Trek, because it's a lot of acting, acting against each other.
I like to call it soap opera meets Columbo.
Yeah, because you've got Kirk is watching Macbeth with this guy, and they never show the left side of his face. And I'm like, why are they not showing the side of this guy's face? And then he turns, and his whole side of his head is just covered in some Phantom of the Opera style mask. And there was so much drama in this episode. All I really paid attention to was Kirk going out of his way to gaslight a woman into because there's this troupe of actors, okay? And Kirk
Yes.
likes one of them because she's a hot blonde. And
Mhm.
so he calls his friend who's on the ship that's taking them to their various performances, and he's like, "Hey, I'll take them. I'll take them this time. Winkadoodle. Just don't tell anybody." And so she comes to Kirk and she's like, "Oh my gosh, we have no ride." And Kirk is like, "Oh no, that's terrible. Not even offering." And she's like,
Mhm.
"I'll make you a bargain if you'll give us a ride." He's like, "Oh, I don't know." And I'm like, "Kirk, this is the worst thing a man can do. This is just one of the worst things you can do as a man."
He wanted her to think it was her idea.
And I love that there are some crew members who are like, "Oh, Kirk's doing this to transport another woman again." Like, this is
Again.
definitely not the first time he's done this.
But it's also, soap opera Columbo, but it's also a little bit of war crimes thrown in there too,
Yeah.
because this guy is allegedly responsible for thousands of people's deaths when he was in charge of a colony, and they've never been able to find this guy, Kodos the conqueror?
Kodos, yeah.
Kodos, yeah. They've never been able to find this guy. He's responsible for the deaths on this planet. They were starving. They were running out of food. And Kodos figured out, I know, I'll just kill half of you, and then the rest of us will have food. Kind of
The real
Thanos that
Thanos,
way.
yeah, the real Thanos maneuver.
Yeah. And they were never able to find this guy Kodos. And, who is he? Where is he? Did he die? So it's kind of like Nazi war crimes that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that's what inspired it, because it was, the 60s, and it was still
He
fresh in
escaped
everybody's mind.
to space Argentina.
Space Argentina, exactly.
Yeah. Spock and McCoy in this episode. Some real friction between these two boys. There's a line where Spock says, "Spare me your philosophical metaphors, Doctor." And just a nice reminder that Spock does not have time for McCoy's bullshit.
A lot of the times, yeah.
A fun piece of trivia about this episode: Barbara Anderson, the woman who plays the hot blonde Lenore, shares the record with Ricardo Montalban and Joan Collins for the most costumes worn in a single Trek episode. She wears a maroon-colored dress, a blue dress with a veil, a fur miniskirt dress, a greenish multicolored mantle on the observation deck, and a black and red evening dress. And that's the kind of fun fact I like, is about the costumes.
I loved the little plot in the story. I mean, with all the acting and stuff that's happening around you, but I love the little bit in the story, the war crimes part of it, because everywhere this acting troupe goes, people are dying, and it's people who were survivors of this thing, the starvation thing, including Kirk and including Riley, who is on the ship as well. So, and I think it was Spock that brought this up. It said, have you noticed that people, could this guy be Kodos?
I'm just putting two and two together over here,
yeah,
but
could this guy be Kodos? And Riley almost gets killed in the episode. So
which they should have just done, because
yeah.
in the next episode is that line that you like.
But what I like about the end of this episode is that the guy that Kirk accuses of being Kodos, he admits it, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the vagary was kind of frustrating as a child, but as I'm older, watching it again, it's kind of satisfactory in a way.
You're like, oh, I get it now. I have some context about nuance.
Exactly. He's like, well, okay, I'm Kodos. Sure, whatever. I'm Kodos. Does that make you happy if I say that?
Yeah, and they have like a nice little tete-a-tete monologue. I do love Shakespeare Star Trek. I love when Star Trek goes theater. It's just even overtly like they do in this episode, but I also like it when they're it's theater, but it's in space. I like that.
I'm tired.
That's my favorite line from this, because there's so much acting. Listen to this.
I am tired.
Oh, there's even a moment too where Lenore calls out. She's she's like, oh, is the lighting always like this on the Enterprise? And Kirk is like, no, we try to simulate Earth night and day as best we can. When Kirk, like me, has insisted that rooms only be lit by mood lighting. No overhead lights. Overhead lights ruin a vibe.
Is the lighting like this on the Starship Enterprise always like this? Well, yes, if you're a beautiful woman.
Yeah.
It's very favorable to you, you know.
All the lights have a Vaseline wash on them. I can't explain
Exactly.
it.
All right.
But the next episode, Balance of Terror, the Enterprise must decide on its response when a Romulan ship makes a destructively hostile armed probe of Federation territory. This episode,
I'm dying to get your
before.
take on this one. You
I've
have
seen this one before because you guys told me to watch it because an alternate timeline version of events in this episode are shown in Strange New Worlds, A Quality of Mercy, in which Captain Christopher Pike remains captain of the Enterprise while Kirk is present as captain of the USS Farragut. Yeah. What an overt racism metaphor, I will say.
It's a crossover episode that is, the original series didn't realize it was a crossover episode, which I found fascinating. But this one is Balance of Terror is. I'm curious to get your take on this because it's often referred to in those top 10 best episodes lists.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, it's our introduction to the Romulans, and the Romulans look extremely similar to Vulcans, which
For
causes some of the
reasons.
which causes some of the crew to be like, "Ruh-roh, do we got one of these guys on our ship?"
Because at this point in the Star Trek storyline is that no one. Well, we've not seen a Romulan. We're not sure what they look like.
They've had no contact with Romulans in a century.
So we're not sure.
We're not sure what they look like.
And then they're able to hack into the bridge of the Romulan ship and get a look at him, and they all look like Spock. And that's where everybody goes,
Ruh-roh.
Now, it was expensive to do the ears, so they didn't do the ears for all of the characters. The rest of them look like this.
Yeah, they introduced the helmets.
They just gave them helmets. And that was just cheaper to do.
That's crazy that helmets were cheaper than ears, but I guess
isn't it though?
Materials
and the labor, I suppose. But there's a Romulan action figure from my Mego 1970s set.
I'm so shocked that you have all of these.
And we get our first look at a Romulan warbird in this episode too.
Yeah, which
I also
pretty
have.
Cool.
Yes.
Featured some, again, truly Shakespearean acting from the Romulan side of things.
Mm-hmm.
This episode has Kerry's favorite line, "Keep the bigotry to yourself," which we probably should have just killed Riley previously if he's going to be a big old racist.
Well, this guy, he's on the bridge, and I'll bet he could be a Romulan. He could be an enemy. Look at the pointy ears, and that's when Kirk lays that line on him, which to me is so foundational to Star Trek, and that is bigotry has no place on this bridge, mister. Keep it in your quarters. Boom, right there.
It's for Riley to say that, it's so not Starfleet. That's just how I approach so many things in my life now, like that's so Starfleet or that's not very Starfleet. And I witnessed somebody today online, a TERF, trans exclusionary radical feminist or whatever, use the there are four lights Picard scene to defend their own bigotry.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm like, that's not very Starfleet of you, because that's not the point of Star Trek at all.
And again, throw this line at them,
Infinite diversity and infinite combinations, and you can't fathom a trans person?
And this person clearly didn't watch early episodes of Next Generation either.
Because Deanna Troi literally says, "I'm going to let my child pick its sex when it wants."
And Data creates a child and says, "I'll let it decide." And then there's a whole planet of people without any that are non-binary. These are clearly people. What's the meme I saw? This is conservatives like Star Trek. No, they watch Star Trek. They're not paying attention.
They're not listening. They like looking at the slutty costumes. Yeah.
This episode is, like I said, it's often listed in the top 10 best episodes, and it's because of the ability to create the tension in the storyline with next to no budget, and it's very much like a submarine. It is a submarine show.
Yeah,
because they have to go silent running at one point, and Spock accidentally hits the button, which happens in every submarine movie when they go on silent running. And that's essentially what they did. They wrote a submarine war show and put it in space.
Like a very Cold War type scenario. McCoy has a line in this episode that I really loved. In this galaxy, there's a mathematical probability of 3 million Earth-type planets, and in all the universe, 3 million galaxies like this one, and in all of that, and perhaps more, only one of each of us. Don't destroy the one named Kirk. It's such a good line.
I forgot that line. I forgot that one. That is good.
Because it's so open-minded, I think, for the 60s to consider how large the universe is and our place in it.
For the time. There we go.
Yeah, just such a good line.
I think it's a great episode. And you get your first look at Mark Leonard, who is, he's played Klingons, Romulans, and Vulcans. He's done the trifecta.
Yeah, he returns to play some more Vulcans. This is also the final original series appearance of Janice Rand. Get out of there, Janice.
Justice for Janice Rand. Yeah.
Go live your life, girl. We will see her again in Star Trek The Motion Picture. But the last episode we're going to talk about this week, which an episode I also really liked for some reason.
Really?
I don't know why. It's called Shore Leave. The past 3 months have left the crew of the Enterprise exhausted and in desperate need of a break. But does this explain McCoy's encounter with the human-sized white rabbit? Or Kirk crossing paths with the prankster who plagued his days at Starfleet Academy? This episode, again, the return of sassy Spock. I love it. I love it. So there's a couple of moments. Kirk is sitting in the captain's chair, and he's complaining about his back hurting. And one of the female members and Spock is standing behind him, but one of the female members of the crew goes to like massage the spot on his back, and he's like, "Oh, that's nice." And he says something like, "Thank you, Spock," and then Spock is right next to him, and he's like, "Oh, that wasn't you." I just love the idea that Kirk thinks Spock would massage the knot in his back.
Now this gets to a lot of
leads to a lot of early slash fiction.
Exactly. It was the first slash fiction, I think. I think I can honestly say it was the first slash fiction with the Kirk and Spock romance stuff.
Yeah,
which is mentioned in the novelization of Star Trek: The Motion Picture, and I'll have to find that.
Oh my gosh!
I'll have to find that paragraph for you where they address that. Is a lot of people wrote about how Kirk and Spock were lovers, and Kirk was asked about it, and he had to I'll find that passage for you and read it to you. Look it up; it's great.
Spock is also a little sassy, and there's a moment. This is a recurring thing that I'm learning that I love. It's when they call Kirk out on measurable stuff. So, like the previous episode, when Janice brings him a salad, and he's like, "What the fuck is this?" And and McCoy's like, "Our readings have shown that you've gained a couple pounds." And this one, Spock is like, one of the crew members needs to go on shore leave because his response time is down 12% and he's not reacting as fast as he was. And Kirk is like, "Okay, yeah, cool. Who is it?" And he's like, "James Kirk." And Kirk has this look on his face like, "Oh, I see."
Spock backs him into a corner there because he starts listing all the problems with this crew member. He says, "But the crew member has been not willing to go on shore leave. He's not been willing to listen to the doctor. He's not been willing." And Kirk goes, "Well, that's just bullshit. He's on my ship. He's got to do, if that's what's ordered, then that's what's ordered. Who is this guy?" It's you." So I got you.
All right. So they go down to this planet again. McCoy sees this big white rabbit like you would see in Alice in Wonderland, and that the rabbit hops off into the forest, followed by a little blonde girl, literally Alice in Wonderland.
Well, he says earlier, as he's talking about how beautiful this planet is, he says, kind of reminds me of something in Alice in Wonderland. And there you go.
Another thing I love about future shows from the 60s is history stops at the 60s.
Yes.
Because there's no like Harry Potter references or like made up references from media in the future.
Nope. Yep, history stops in the 60s because that's all we got.
But speaking of costumes, and you know how much I love costume trivia, William Blackburn, who played the White Rabbit, is a professional ice skater in real life, and he got the costume from the Ice Capades for free. However, Blackburn was claustrophobic and had a really painful time wearing it, especially when the costume designer had originally sewn the rabbit head to the suit. After nearly suffocating, Blackburn tore off the head, and the costume designer got very mad. They negotiated, and they put the head back on with Velcro. Blackburn would later go on to wear the Gorn head in Arena in 1967, and he said that was even worse.
Oh, yeah, that Gorn costume looked uncomfortable, even though the zipper was exposed and you could see up the back. But we'll get to that episode. That episode's coming, and again, one of those seminal moments for young Kerry, that episode. Anyway.
I don't think I will ever tire of seeing experimental camera shots, because this episode had cameras on a dolly following the crew as they were running towards the gunshots, because Sulu found a gun and is explaining how to use the gun.
Yeah, because Sulu was thinking about his ancient weapon collection that he has.
The man loves ancient weapons.
The planet provides whatever it is you're thinking about. Alice in Wonderland, there's a rabbit and Alice. I'm thinking about ancient weapons. I'm thinking about a samurai. And this planet provides. It is.
The planet provides whatever you're thinking of. So like New Yeoman Barrows loves a Renaissance dress. That's another thing I forgot to talk about in the Menagerie Part 2. I hope to God that they do this on Strange New Worlds, that they do when Pike is at whatever Ren Fair style planet where I just want to see them do that episode on Strange New Worlds. Anyway, but she thinks about Renaissance dresses, and there's a Renaissance dress that appears, and she puts it on, and I gotta say, I would be so embarrassed to be in a deadly senorio wearing this dress.
Well, there's a great line when she finds the dress, because McCoy's there with her, because they're getting kind of chummy. And he says, I'm going to go and change behind this bush. Don't peek. He says, my dear, when I peek, it's because I'm a professional.
Gross.
Something along those lines, where
Gross.
I've seen it before.
But yeah, I did have the thought, are we on Talos 4 again? Because same kind of concept.
Except this was I don't want to say robots, but it's
well,
like
they
that.
even the people of this planet, the man of this planet even says, like, I don't think you humans are ready to even comprehend what we got going on here. And Spock says, yeah, man, they are not ready.
Well, and McCoy got a look at it, because there's a part where, again, Ren Fair, the Black Knight shows up, and McCoy jumps in front of the blade to protect
Barrows.
the Barrows, and dies.
He straight up dies, and I'm like, oh my God, they can't just kill McCoy, can they?
McCoy's dead, yeah, and then at some point his body disappears, and they're like, well, we got to find his body, but then there's all this other shit going on, and there's the bully from Starfleet Academy, Finnegan, who is a real dick.
He's like, how's this for a prank? And then just punches Kirk in the face. Like, that's not much of a prank.
And but then we learn later that's what would be satisfactory to Kirk. What would be his great time? It would be beating the hell out of this bully that gave him nothing but trouble in Starfleet Academy.
Also running back into the hot blonde that he hooked up with from
Ruth.
school. Ruth. And I gotta tell you, if I landed on a planet and my ex-boyfriend showed up, I would throw myself right off the planet. I want nothing to do with any
Well,
of my past relationships.
But see, you would be thinking about them. You'd be thinking
That's
about
true.
something else. You'd probably on that planet be thinking, hey, this is like Star Trek, and suddenly you'd be in a Starfleet uniform and a communicator.
I would be thinking, okay, 2 bits of trivia. A chained tiger is brought in to appear in this episode, and it never directly interacts with any of the performers. William Shatner had originally hoped to wrestle it, but was persuaded that it would not be a wise decision. The audacity of this man.
Well, because he was told by so many people, you're a god, and he believed it. So
the audacity of this man.
I can wrestle a tiger.
I could take it. I'm Mike Tyson. The script also called for an elephant to appear in the episode, and an elephant was indeed hired by production staff and brought to set, but due to running over time and other difficulties during shooting, the animal never made it to the cameras, which made associate producer Robert Justman, who was not on set at the time and couldn't oversee production, truly angry. Later, production staff members often jokingly asked assistant director Greg Peters, "Say, when do you get to use your elephant?"
I went to the trouble to get you an elephant. You didn't use it.
I did all this work. It's Babylon all over again if you haven't seen Babylon.
Yeah.
This episode, I guess, Gene Roddenberry was like frantically like rewriting like while they were shooting, and the filming time was normally 6 days, but this one took like 7 days to shoot.
And he was rewriting to make things more affordable because the original script was very fanciful with everything that they wanted to bring in. But we learn at the end that this race of aliens, whatever they are, they created this planet and they can create anything. As we learn again, very misogynistic at the end, McCoy shows up.
In these troll doll cabaret dancers, because they have like this fur scenario going on, and in their belly buttons too.
And he's got these 2 gorgeous women on his arms, and he says, "You should see the facility they have, Jim. They can do anything." And these 2 women immediately sidle up to Spock and the other members
like,
of the
"Oh,
crew.
no, thank you."
Yeah.
But yeah, I
the aliens say, "Come on down and play. Just be careful what you think about."
Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of careless.
Like, you guys can have a day pass, but otherwise you're not like really ready for this jelly.
Don't think of anything dangerous, all right? Even though
I couldn't help myself.
It's human nature to think about stuff like that. I mean, we've seen the examples, because the samurai shows up, the World War II plane strafing them.
Again, no
guns.
Other history beyond 1966.
Yeah. But it's just human nature to think about these bad things. And I think it was very irresponsible of the aliens to say, "Come on down and play. Just be careful. Don't think of anything dangerous."
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure they had like the safety features on. But I quite enjoyed that episode. And all these episodes, which brings us to the end of this episode for this week. Thank you, Kerry, for joining me again.
It is an honor.
Next week, we will be talking about episodes 16 through 20, and we'll keep going where no man's gone before, but everyone's gone before.
I like that. You're well put. Thank you.
Thank you all.